How many of you would raise your hand and say, I'm a person of integrity? Now, what does that mean? Those are some of the questions that Jeffrey Klubeck asks when he does keynotes. And today we're going to talk about integrity and really how that's part of the success of motivating and holding your team accountable, as well as for you as a leader, as a person who wants to advance your life. Check out this fast and furious conversation with Jeffrey Klubeck.
Welcome to Advance with Mike Acker, the podcast designed to help entrepreneurs, business leaders, and professionals alike break through barriers by improving their practical leadership skills and increasing confidence in speaking. Your host is a best-selling author, executive coach, and founder of the Advance Public Speaking School and Advantage Publishing Group, two companies dedicated to providing an edge for leaders. Find out more about Mike at mikeacker.com. Now here's your host, Mike Acker.
Jeffrey, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, Mike.
Looking forward to diving in. And what I want to do is dive into a question that I'm intrigued by when I was reading about you, kind of studying your book and studying a little bit about you. You talk a lot about motivation, and I'm a huge student. I love the idea of motivation, written about it, thought about it a whole bunch. So talk to us about where we get motivation from personally and how we can help others be motivated.
Wow, it's fun to take these concepts that may be subjective or nebulous or theoretical or conceptual, right? Concepts, and get them a little more actionable. So like with something like motivation, it can be so broad. It helped me to just look at two different frames, internal and external, right? So external motivation, you're talking about strategies, tactics, and resources. If my wife, for example, says, make dinner for the kids, I might be paralyzed or stuck. But if she says, make dinner for the kids and the ingredients, the instructions, and the tools are on the counter, I'll just go. So all of a sudden, by giving me external motivation, strategies, tactics, resources, I'm a little less concerned about making mistakes, or I'm a little less stuck, So, the map, the directions, a canteen of water, these are external strategies, tactics, resources. So it's not enough, though, just to get some strategy. I think that people need to know themselves, know their behavioral instincts, if you will, their personality types, or what's instinctually natural for them, and select strategy that integrates, that syncs with their natural behavioral style. Wouldn't do me any good to choose a strategy that I dislike or seems like nails on a chalkboard for me. There's a lot of different ways to the same destination. So there should be a strategy that's going to fit my behavioral style. It's just a matter of finding it, learning it, studying it. Most things that can be achieved out there have been achieved and are studyable, right? But none of that matters. None of that matters if you're trying to build a mansion on top of quicksand. And I mean, mindset. So internal, so external strategies, tactics, resources, but internal is your mindset, your values, your attitudes, your beliefs, your fears, your perspectives, your faith, anything that's influencing what's going on inside. So that includes knowing what you want. A lot of people don't know what they want, right? So deciding what you want is a great way to get yourself motivated. Where people have a hard time figuring out my purpose, my gifts, my potential. And without making those decisions, it's really hard to sync up internal, external sources of motivation if we don't have a North Star, if we don't have a major guiding force. So there's a lot more to say about motivation, but the where I'd start is internal and external.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely great. So as you're listening to this today, thank you so much for tuning in, checking this out. And I'm going to introduce Jeffrey a little bit, let him talk about who he is and where he comes from. But here's a great starting point for you as you're driving, as you're thinking, as you're watching. What is your internal motivation? And if you're not quite sure, we'll give you some thoughts along the way today. And maybe even just doing something temporary. You don't have to set your whole life in motion. And then what is your external motivation? What's going to help you out there? I love that, Jeffrey, that you're saying it's different. There's different tactics. A checklist is great for some, not great for others. So great realizations. But who are you, Jeffrey? Who are you to speak to us on self-image and motivation and all these different areas that we're going to cover today?
Yeah, I'm just a guy. Just a guy that has. I'm just a guy. No, from a credibility perspective, why would people listen to a guy like me? I have a master's degree in communication. I believe I am a master of communication who has a master's in communication. Some of our gifts are God-given, and then some of them are self-generated. And I'm a big fan of integrating God-given with self-generated gifts, right? So I taught public speaking public speaking and communication modules for 20 years. So brick and mortar. Thousands of students have gotten past their fear of public speaking into a level of competence when it comes to communication, presenting ideas, organizing thoughts, etc. I'm preaching to the choir when we talk about the value of public speaking, Mike. I mean, your track record speaks for itself in what you've done in public speaking and how you've helped others. And then when I got into personal professional growth, that's when it got really exciting because they fed each other. I was a better professor, right? Because I'm a professor, but I just talk to them like a coach. Like, let's motivate you. Let's hold you accountable. Let's select strategy. So there was the rah that I was able to do, and I had a stand-up comedian type of delivery style. I love teaching classes. I didn't like grading papers so much, but so I learned that you make it fun and you get people engaged, and public speaking was one thing. The people that were going to embrace it and use it, and later on, that was cool. But what I found out, Mike, I was teaching people to finish what they start. I was teaching people to pay attention, to follow directions, to support classmates. I was teaching people to show up. I was teaching people to be aware of due dates. I was teaching, right, and to take pride in their work, and to not worry about the things not to worry about. So that had nothing to do with what was in the textbook of public speaking, those things. And I was able to really make a difference for my students in those ways because I understood motivation, accountability, engagement as from my personal professional growth education. And I became a coach and built a coaching practice and built a coach's training because I was a professor. So when I went through my coach's training, right, when I was consuming the content of coaches training and unstructured training, I was a little critical, because I knew about student learning objectives, and I knew about content and exercises and homework and assignments and competency and quizzes and how to structure curriculum.
Sure.
And there were some things, to be noticed, but I had to keep my head down and just stay in the training for what I was there for, which is learn how to coach and learn how to build a coaching practice. And I thought, instead of correcting this guy's training, I'll just do my own when I know how to coach. So I built a coaching practice, built a coach's training around my methodology for coaching. I keep telling you what it's built on, these three words: engagement, motivation, and accountability. And I built the coaching practice. It took me all around the world. And I've been on 4 continents, 12 countries, many major cities within those countries. So I've worked with entrepreneurs all over the world. I've gotten thousands of people past the fear of public speaking. I've earned 6 figures year after year after year, just convincing people to talk to me. And I'm just a guy, but that doesn't mean that none of those reasons are reasons to listen to me. That's just who I am. I always think that, the reasons to listen to me are really, truly in the ears of the beholder.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, I'm excited to see what we cover here today. And I know it's going to be helpful to people as the huge area that I talk about is that fear of speaking. And the book that I've written on that now has over 1,000 ratings, and a lot of colleges have picked it up. So it's pretty exciting. Let's talk about this accountability aspect, because when it comes to accountability, there's some different thoughts on it. And so how can we help people? So think about the person who's listening right here, and they're thinking, I need to be held accountable, or they're in a position of leadership and they need to hold people accountable. So talk to us a little bit about the value of accountability and some of the forms and methods in which it takes.
This is one of my favorite topics. And you asked it in a really beautiful way. I can, to see the totality of it in front of me. First of all, for the second part, the people that need to hold other people accountable. Right. Right. The leaders, right. Let's say you're a top producing contributor, and then they elevate you to manager. And now you've got to hold all of your friends accountable because you got the raise and the promotion of their job. Right.
Yep.
You need to learn accountability. Or let's say you start a business and you've got employees, you want to run it like a family because but now you're a dysfunctional family that has no idea how to hold each other accountable. Congratulations. Right. So there's a lot of people out there that need to hold other people accountable. And it's very funny. I set this up to say this. It starts with being held accountable. So if you are in a position where you're going to need to hold others accountable, the first recommendation is that you've had the experience of being accountable, being held accountable, that you understand what accountability is. If somebody came up to you and said, what's accountability? That you have an answer, that you have an idea of what it means. And I'm going to go deeper. If you like, really, I'm going to go like, this is what the answer you may not have expected. It takes love. It takes love. On surface, accountability, we hear about light a fire under my butt. I need you to push me, kick my butt, get in my face, hold me accountable. It seems so confrontational and almost aggressive. But that's all on surface. The truth of the matter is it takes love to hold somebody accountable. And by that, I mean the willingness to be vulnerable. Because when we do confront somebody on their story, on their commitments, on their reporting, on their behavior, on their performance, on their results, on their mindset, it is so much confrontation.
Okay, let me pause on this right here.
Yeah.
I love that you're saying it takes love, because you're absolutely right. I mean, with my son, very easy to hold him accountable in some ways. I absolutely love him, and hey, buddy, this is not good for you, etc., or this is good for you, and I want the best for you. But sometimes we manage people that we don't even like. And sometimes we direct people we don't even like. And if we're even honest with ourselves, sometimes we are looking at our own selves and we don't even like ourselves. So,
Correct.
So
Yes.
What do you do when you don't like the person that you're holding accountable, and therefore maybe don't even love them? And what do you do when it's external, or what do you do when it's internal?
Yeah. You don't like them, you love them. You liking them I'm not talking about liking them. I am talking about loving them. I'm talking about, leadership is love, right? With your son, your dad, and you've got a little bit of power, authority, some in-group association, right? There's the relationship is multi-layered, and some of those layers can dilute other layers, right? It's interesting, but I love your honesty when you say, well, sometimes you don't like the person. Well, we if we're a leader, right, it doesn't matter what we like. We got to get the job done. We gotta, maybe I'll like them better if I can help them grow personally and professionally. So I have to stay out of judgment, which is more of a management piece, right? And into leadership, which is help this person be the best version of themselves they could possibly be. And if I'm judging them and I'm paying attention to that voice in my head about a characteristic, a behavior, or a decision they made that I wouldn't have made, or I don't know why they did that, etc. And if I let myself go, like, pain is mandatory, but suffering's optional. So I have to quickly sever the dwelling and the judgment and replace that with questions, appreciative inquiry, mutual discovery, rapport building, a strategy offering, debriefing, 360 behavior. I have all these other tools at my disposal that I would use instead of judgment or dwelling in any dislike for a person. And now you bring up another interesting thing. What if we don't like ourselves and we don't like the person? Well, it's the same thing. We have to love ourselves. We have to love other people. So none of us are perfect. None of us are going to be perfect. But we all have the opportunity to say that we are trying to get better every day. We're working to get better every day. I have an idea of what better is. I have a plan to get there, and I'm in action on that plan. If you want anything else from me, let's talk about it. But I need to be a product of the product. Back to what I was saying before. I need to be somebody that understands accountability. I need to be somebody that has been held accountable. I need to be somebody that can explain accountability, maybe even teach structures in accountability, which we could get to, the X's and O's of how you actually hold somebody accountable. Like if somebody makes a commitment to you on a Tuesday, says they're going to do something for themselves, for their own goal achievement. Like it's not really going to matter for you whether they do it or not, unless you're responsible for their productivity. But if they say they're going to do something on a Tuesday, and then you meet with them on the following Tuesday and you say, yes or no, did you do it or not? And they go, no. Now, what do? There's communication strategies, there's techniques, there's communication structures, there's questions and objectives that an accountability coach or a leader wants to achieve in that moment. The moment that somebody is, quote, out of integrity around a commitment, there's X's and O's communication strategy for that. But at a high level,
give us some of those X's and O's too, because I think I think people are walking away going, okay, I love the understanding. I love the idea of loving them. I get it. That makes sense. My mind grabs a hold of that. What are some of the X's and O's? What are some of the strategies and tactics I can put into place?
Yeah, I'll give you very, 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 very core, very easy to understand, harder to execute, 3-step approach. When you are out of integrity with yourself or somebody's out of integrity with you, and it doesn't mean they're a bad person, you follow? This is one of the things that we have to get through. Like when you say you're out of integrity, it doesn't mean you have no integrity. It just means you said you were going to do something, you didn't do it. It's just math. It's not judgment. You follow, right? So that's a big piece. But here are 3 things that you do, a 3-step approach. So if your son, Mike, says to you that he's going to do something, and then you follow up and say, did you do that? Here are 3 things you can do with your son, right? If you're a manager and a direct report says they're going to do something and they didn't do it, here are 3 things you can do with your direct report. If you're a new coach out there and you're having a hard time holding your client accountable, especially because you don't want them to get mad at you and fire you because you need the income, here are 3 things you can do. Are you guys, are you with me on how I'm setting this up?
Yeah,
this is useful
absolutely.
for so many people.
Yeah.
So when somebody is out of integrity around a commitment, when it's discovered, when it comes up in the leadership conversation that somebody says, no, I did not do what I said I was going to do, the first thing you want to do is get them to own it. That's first thing you do. That's the objective. Own it. They have to own it. So you would ask a question like, well, why didn't you do that?
Right.
Now, what you have to be ready for, and this is why you need love in your heart, because you need patience and you need compassion, because here's what you're going to get. You're going to get something short of 100% responsibility. Well, I was going to, but, or well, I meant to, but, oh, well, I decided I was going to do something else, or whatever it is. You follow? But it might be something short of 100% responsibility. Maybe they do take 100% responsibility and they say, well, I know I committed to that in our last session, but 3 things happened, and then I decided I was just going to do this instead. And so what I did was actually better because blah, 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 blah. And you know what they're doing is they're putting up all the smoke in the mirrors. Do you hear that? Right? And this sounds familiar.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you got to come back and say, hang on a second. Who's responsible? Who made the commitment? When did you know that you weren't going to do this anymore? Who's responsible for this? So there's all kinds of follow-up questions you have to get them to sit in this is a hard thing to do in admission. They have to acknowledge, instead of excusing, instead of shuffling, or I was going to, but the cat spilled the milk and then it made me 15 minutes late, and then traffic, and after that point I just decided what the hell, whatever, right? They can't be in a state of mind, or they can't be communicating excuse or anything other than taking responsibility, right? It may not be a big deal, right? But they still, it's less of a deal as soon as they take responsibility. Like, hey, I said I was going to do that and I didn't do that. Is there anybody else responsible for this? No, it's me. I failed on this one. I wasn't my word. I didn't do what I said. I forgot. I didn't remind myself. I wasn't powerful. Whatever they need to say, it's got to have an I statement, and then that accepting of the responsibility for the thing being done and what their word was. Right.
So I love that there's a duality in both motivation and an accountability.
Yes.
And I know that one of the things that you like to say again and again is that motivation and accountability equals results.
That's right.
And so there's a duality in motivation, internal, external. There's a duality in accountability, internal, external.
Correct. Yeah, and I could break it down other ways too. This comes from you understand, when people are in public speaking, when they're deciding on their topic's vast, right? So what we have to do is help them break that topic down into main points and then the subpoints. There's no speech in the world that is enough time to talk about every topic. So guys like you and I, we have a lot of experience with categorical thinking. Is this topical? Is it chronological? Is it spatial, geographical? We've got partitions in our mind to help break large subjects down, right? So there's a lot of different ways we could do it, but internal, external is a very easy frame. And so back to the 3 steps, right? That one is get them to own it, okay? Once they own it, then you can go into step 2, which is, you could call it, if I'm training somebody, you call it leverage, right? Somebody like Tony Robbins might call it leverage, where you have leverage on your subject, right? Which gives you more power than you would have had without. It's like a communication tool. And leverage is getting people associated to the consequences of being or not being our word, or doing or not doing. So there's a duality here as well. there's two consequences, two rewards, same two categories, two sides of the same coin, of when we are our word. Number one, right? Our sense of self strengthens, right? Our own internal sense of integrity. Like, I did what I said I was going to do. So that makes me stronger mindset wise. My chest is out a little higher. I'm standing a little taller because I am a person of my word every time I do what I said I was going to do. So that's one benefit. And then the other benefit is I'm closer to some goal. When I take action, right, I'm going to learn something or I'm going to advance somewhere. So when I do what I say I'm going to do, I always get those two benefits: progress towards a goal and a sense of self. When I fail to be my word, those are the two categories as well. Those are the two consequences. My sense of self diminishes or disintegrates a little bit. And then if I don't do what I said I was going to do, then I'm no closer to getting what I wanted to get. So there's a duality there. So we want to help people as leaders feel and acknowledge the consequences of having not done what they said they were going to do. And then once they own it, once they feel the consequences, now we're ready to do step 3, which is get a decommitment or a recommitment. So we can't leave that program running in the background. We're either going to close that and decommit to it, or we're going to recommit to it and turn the screw of accountability a little bit and make sure that we do a better job as leaders, helping them keep their word this time, right? So a lot of times it's the leader and the coach that has to work hard at not letting somebody commit to something that has a high probability that they won't do it.
But wait a minute. I want to move to leadership so I don't have to do as much.
I'm sorry. So
I want to move to leadership so I don't have to do as much.
Yeah. Well, I would agree with that. There's a dot hanging there.
That is a thought process people have. It is a thought process.
Well, guess what? You're just treating, you'll always have to do more. What you're doing, there's nothing wrong with that statement if you just finish it, right? Because it sounds incomplete. Ready? Here's how it sounds in my head. I want to move to leadership so I won't have to do as much technician work. Okay.
Yeah.
But now you're still going to have to do a lot of managing technician work and the mindset and the egos and the politics and different levels of responsibilities as we advance. That's why I believe, thank you, by the way, for quoting motivation plus accountability equals results. That's the subtext of the integrity game. But I also believe soft skills make strong leaders. Soft skills make strong teams. Soft skills make strong organizations. So you're going to be working hard at the soft skills when you move into leadership.
I say that in tongue in cheek because it's very interesting when sometimes there can be a thought process. Like, I've worked my butt off as a contributor. I've coded, I've done the tech work, I've shown up, I've done the deliveries, and now I get the chair, and now I get to lead and just read and just whatever it is that people have this view of. But really, even as you're talking about this accountability aspect, there's a lot of work that now it's not so much that you're doing for yourself, the tech work, but you're doing for others. And there's a higher level of responsibility.
Well, it's a different level of responsibility. I think that everybody should see what their responsibilities are as the most important thing. Right. Everything's only strong as the weakest link. So if everybody sees their link as the most important link in the chain, every link's going to thrive. So I'd say different, not more, not that, you know what I mean? I wouldn't go hierarchical, even though there is in corporations. But the thing about it is the misnomer, the mindset piece that people need to.
Let me push back. I actually think there is more, not because of the hierarchy, but because now there's more than just you at stake.
For
me, I mean, as a single guy, the responsibility was to feed myself. Mm-hmm. Hey, I can feed myself, and if I don't feed myself, then the only person that's paying for that is me. But then you have a family, you have kids, you have people who you're responsible for, and I do think there's a higher level, there's a more responsibility and a higher level hierarchical. Because
said that way,
other people
said that way. I hear you. I still would say it's more challenging or more expansive. Like the only point that I want to make, not better or worse, right, is different skill set, right? So it's speaking of the mindset, say, hey, congratulations, you've done your time, you've paid your dues, and you get to go from on your feet to in the chair. Well, now there's all sets of dues to be paid in the chair. Mm-hmm. Now you haven't graduated, you've just started something new. And so all the, like let's say there's 12 dues to pay, They get on your feet in the factory floor, right? Well, how many dues are there to pay in the chair? Or is this the only level you want? So we still constantly need to condition people to declare what's their North Star. If your North Star used to be to get in the chair, now that you're in the chair, what's the North Star? And when they say, well, from here, I want to go there. All right. So now what do you need to learn, master? What dues do you need to pay in order to get there and take 100%? And it is, if they're focused on what their dues are, what their due, then and they're serious about that, then the responsibilities for caring for others will come with it, I think. But I hear what you're saying, man. Back to teaching classes, as a professor, I'll give you a story from the classroom that validates what you're saying. And because I hear you once you restated more clearly, thank you, is that
I'm just pushing the buttons. I just
well, check it out. In group, when you got to group communication modules, I would say everybody needs to do the persuasive speeches as groups. And at first, I didn't want to feel them that they were pressed upon, and I assigned their groups and say, hey, you guys figure out what groups you want to be in, groups of 3 or 4, not 2, not 5, 3 or 4, and come up with a topic, and you held the whole thing, submit a topic. That's not, you teach group communication, how to have effective meetings, how to delegate the tasks, how to come together, quality, assign roles, all of that stuff. Anyway, after the first semester of doing it, I'll never forget, the A students, the best students in the class would come up to me like, Professor Klubeck, I got a bad group. The guy's not doing his work and they didn't show up for the meeting and I had to do it all and I want an A and they don't care. And I got that. I'm like, oh no, I just punished this poor person who was doing great work all semester long. Now, all of a sudden somebody said, hey, can I be in your group? And now they're doing all of the work. That wasn't cool of me. So I created a student eval form, and I would say, hey, guess what? You're going to be in groups. You decide your groups, but you could do peer review, anonymous, and turn it in. If any of your group members aren't performing, you rate them in these categories, turn that in. That'll affect their grade. And then that was more work for me, and nobody would do it and felt awkward. So what I have, you know what I mean? So here's what I ended up doing, Mike. I ended up saying, all right, here's the deal. You're going to do a group speech at the end. You're going to be in groups of 3. And the number 1 point earner in class was automatically going to be in a group with number 2 and number 3, and then 4, 5, 6 would be in a group, and 7, 8, 9 would be in a group. And then as I'm saying this, I'm looking around like, that's right, 27, 28, and 29. You guys are all going to be together. And they all started looking over their shoulders. Okay. So what would happen was then we'd get to the end of the semester. And of course, that's how the groups were assigned. And these people that, to your point, Mike, left to their own devices, only having to worry about themselves all semester long, were failing or getting D's. And now they were in a group situation and they didn't want to be the weak link. Mm-hmm. So there's these people that were by themselves as individuals failing my class, failing their class. Well, my class, it's their class, right? They were failing their class. And then on the last speech, the big persuasive speech, they would come and get B's and A's. And their personalities would come out and they cared and it was amazing to see what people were willing to do when they knew they were responsible for others that they weren't willing to do for themselves. So
yeah, that's fantastic.
Fascinating. Yeah.
So motivation,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, accountability. You got this, and a lot of what you're saying can really revolve around an idea that you are just obsessed with. And so I think this would be a great way for us to take the conversation here. And it really has to do with ethical leadership. What does it mean to be an ethical leader? What does it mean to inspire? What does it mean to motivate your team? And ultimately comes down to it, and it's the name of your book, integrity. So What does it mean to be a person who's playing a game, the game of work, the game of life, with integrity? And what are some ways that we can do that as leaders of ourselves and leaders of others?
Yeah, it's a great question. First of all, broadly, ethical leadership means, I didn't write the book on ethical leadership. There's other sources, if you want to break down that term. Okay. But again, just
what I'm going for there is integrity in that sense.
Yeah. I'm getting to integrity. I want to address this piece. It's very simple, right? We can think about what we do want, or we can think about what we don't want, right? And so most people are motivated. Human beings are motivated by one of 2 forces, either away from pain or towards pleasure. So to me, an ethical leader tries to motivate people towards pleasure instead of away from pain. Right. And then it has to go a little bit further than that, because we got to get the sadists out and the, people that think that pleasure is winning at all costs. No, that's not what I meant. you follow. Like, in other words, so it's almost like to be, I watched Obi-Wan the other, you got to be a Jedi instead of a Sith, right? Like, like the desire to accumulate power so that you can help other people is good. The desire to accumulate power at other people's expense and is not so good, right? So I don't care what your theology is, what anybody's theology is. Don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, right? And call the rest whatever you want. But if you can lead people towards pleasure without lying, cheating, or stealing, or encouraging them to lie, cheat, or steal, you're probably closer to an ethical leader than a boss, a manager, a director, a supervisor, whatever. You can lead people to do stuff by coercion, manipulation, misinformation. You can
Sith powers.
Whatever, like the powers of persuasion and influence are just, they start neutral.
Yeah.
Aristotle, logos, ethos, pathos.
Right.
Now we're going to use logos, ethos, pathos for good, or are we going to use it for not so good?
Yeah, Robert Cialdini's The 7 Elements of Influence. I mean, fantastic.
That's right.
And he originally created it so that you could be careful of being wrongly influenced. Now, of course, lots of people have used it to wrongly influence others.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that powers of persuasion and influence, leaders, they're all forms of leadership, right? And you hesitate to refer to certain examples. Like it's a very sensitive country right now. And I guess that's always true. The more I study history, people have been saying that for years. But I don't want to be divisive. I think red and blue, two wings of the same bird, right? But the idea is that there are I'm interested in the communication aspect, the rhetorical criticism, the logos, the ethos, the pathos, the messaging, the play, right? Which either side would accuse the other of, prey on emotions and what we know about. Human motivation has been studied, right? We know what people want, right? So it seems to me that to lead people, I either got to tell them what they want is in jeopardy, and then they'll go do what I want them to do, if I can be credible, and right, or I'll tell them that what they want is a couple steps away. They just go do what I tell them to do. We know what people want: health, they want relationships, they want to earn a good living, they want entertainment, they want to give back, they want excitement, variety. So if I can tell you all of those things are going away unless you do what I say, I might be effective. And I can tell you those things are within your grasp. If you do what I say, I might be effective. But what people want is known. Ethical leadership tries to help oneself and others get what they want without force, manipulation, dishonesty, lying, cheating, stealing, misinformation, covering up, CYA, cover your butt, right? Ethical leadership, they're accountable. Ethical leaders, they put the work in. Ethical leaders, they take the time to get to know the people they're leading. Ethical leaders want what's best for their people, whether it helps them individually or not. Ethical leader knows that if I lose person A because this other opportunity is right for person A, then I'm a good enough leader, I'll hire the new person A, and that'll be my fit, instead of keeping somebody in their chair because it serves me and I can't afford to let somebody go and blah, 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 blah. So it's a selflessness, it's a vulnerability, right? Love is the willingness to be vulnerable. So an ethical leader is willing to be vulnerable, and an unethical leader is not.
Yeah. So where does integrity play into all that?
Yeah. Well, integrity it gets us there. It's close, but in my experience, it hasn't done enough. So when you talked about it earlier, you noticed it, but I'm giving you the word, right? You said the duality. There's a duality. Well, left alone, they're two separate units. But when we integrate internal and external, now we're more empowered to talk about motivation when we look at it those two ways. When we integrate motivation with accountability, we're more empowered to get the results, right? When we bring things together. So everybody, here's my thing, Mike. Integrity is one of these words, like you mentioned, being like parenting or driving, right? Where everybody thinks themselves to be really good at it, but everybody else sucks.
I'm an amazing driver. I'm a fantastic driver. Right. Depending on what you mean by driving, like aggressively cutting across the street, I'm really good at that.
Really good at that, right? So like George Carlin had the great line, like, why is everybody driving faster, you a freaking idiot, and everybody driving slower, you a freaking moron, right? Like anybody that's not doing what, so the autobiographical versus biographical perspective and on and on. So what I'm getting at is, we as parents, like, why are they doing that? We criticize parents, we criticize drivers. And what we usually do when it comes to the word integrity is we only use it when we're accusing somebody else of not having any. Or there's the snake oil salespeople out there that say, oh, you want to buy from me because I have integrity. But we know that if we studied their behavior, if they were willing to be counted, we'd find all kinds of out of integrities in their processes or their whatever. Okay. So what I'm trying to do with the integrity game, this is like, it's a parable. It's a made up story. It's set to baseball. Because that's something that I'm integrating into the book, is my like a memoir kind of legacy play for me. There's characters in here that are named after my kids with some of their qualities, and there's a character in here, it's got a little bit of all of us in there. And anyway, there's like a season ticket holder and a rookie baseball player and a hot dog vendor, and a 10-point model emerges through the story. So I created a 10-point model for integrity to make it accessible, to make it possible for people to up level their integrity, to increase their integrity for self and others.
Because like driving, people don't really know where they are on that. Is that the kind of the idea behind it? Because how good of a driver I am, I'm either good or bad. And integrity, like I'm either good in integrity or bad. And you're saying, hey, there's actually 10 different levels.
You got it. Well, 10. Okay, you're onto something. First of all, we do want to get rid of the either or thinking. You're onto something beautiful here, Mike. So when I'm doing the public speaking version of this, I'm available for keynotes and right. When I'm doing the public speaking version of this, I will start off and I'll ask, how many of you have integrity? By show of hands, right? By show of hands or make a noise or whatever. How many of you believe you have integrity? And you can imagine, you can see it right now, Mike, 100% of the audience raises their hand. So I say, all right, if you raised with your left, please switch to your right and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear not to shoot the messenger in 45 minutes, because we're going to discuss integrity and I hope to expand your understanding of it. I'm going to bet, my keynote rating, the ratings that you give me, I'll bet my ratings that your understanding of integrity could use a broadening. I'd love to be the guy. And I bet all of you are not going to raise your hand so quickly when I ask at the end, how many of you believe you have integrity? Some of you won't raise your hand at all. Some of you will contemplate and really look within. And that's what I want to do. I want to make it easy and fun to look within. But first, what are we talking about? Let's make sure that we're talking about the same thing. Right. Okay. And this from a communication perspective, the meaning that I attach to a word isn't necessarily the meaning that somebody else will attach to the same word. So
because driving could be golf.
You got it. It could be driving me crazy. If you're, like if you have kids and if you're married, everybody drives each other crazy. And the house got a lot smaller during COVID and all that stuff. Driving, or like crashing a class, right? If you're a student, you know what that means. If you're not a student, you're like, is everybody okay? Right. So terminology, anyway, that's not the point that I want to make. The point is people have a limited understanding of integrity. Okay. Yeah. So when I ask, what is it? I'm always going to get two answers, Mike, and I'll see you nodding if this comes to mind, like something you might say. But you imagine the room, right? You've done public speaking. You know that there's extroverts that want to raise their hand, that they want to interact. And as a speaker, I want to get somebody on the left side of the room interacting. I want to get somebody on the right side of the room interacting. I want to, find some anchors and some eye contact people throughout. And I want to learn some names and I want to get that going on. So hang on, let's make sure we're talking about the same thing. What is integrity? And somebody, you, sir, what's your name? Joe. Thank you, Joe. What is it? Right. So one of the answers I always get is be your word. Do what you say you're going to do. And then people will nod. I'm like, okay, does everybody like, we'll pin that on the board. We'll use it. Do what you say you're going to do. And somebody else, and when you say you're going to do it, that's like, the real stern, ruler tapper, the person with the ruler that'll tap your knuckles if you're a minute late. But punctuality is a form of accountability, isn't it? If you say 8 o'clock, that means 8 o'clock, doesn't it? Not 8:01, 8:02, 8:03, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so do what you say you're going to do. When you say you're going to do it, that's all what? That's what? Being your word, right? Okay. Anybody else have an understanding of integrity? And somebody else will say, like Sue over here, Joe and Sue will say, do the right thing regardless of who's watching. Do the same thing, behave the same way when nobody's watching as you would when somebody is watching. So I see you nodding, and that makes sense. You've heard that before. So those are the two answers I get, and I like those because here's what we get to do. I get to do. In both of those cases, there is an integration. In one, there's the integration, coming together of the word with the behavior. And on the other, there's the behavior with the value or the ethic or the moral. So in both cases, there's integration, a coming together of one thing with another. And in both cases, it's behavior that is integrating with something else. So now we get to ask people to write this down. Behavior is the evidence of our integrity. It's not what we say. It's not what I thought I was going to do, what I hope to do. Like, I didn't ask at the beginning, how many of you think yourselves to be a good person? I expect everybody to raise their hand. I think everybody at core is a good person too, right? What I asked is how many of you believe you have integrity? And it's a trick question. And I keep teasing a little bit. My point is, in both cases, there's an integration, a coming together of one thing with another. In both cases, behavior is involved, right? Yeah. But if I asked 1 million people, what's the definition of integrity? Not one of the million answers would use the word integration in their answer. Yet they start with the same 6 letters, I-N-T-E-G. So I want people to focus on, when we talk about integrity, it's not just, oh, they're a bad person, they're out of integrity, or I'm a good person, I have integrity.
Right.
It's not just, I like myself, I have integrity. I don't like them, they have no integrity. No. I want you to focus on integration. What is coming together? What are the things that are coming together? And we say out of integrity when they're not together. We say in integrity when they are together. So what brings them together? What keeps them together?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, so that I want to start there, integration. But now the other point is, why 10 points on the model? Why not just behavior with word or behavior with value? Because Mike, if I said I was going to drink 18, I always use this example. If I said I was going to drink 18 beers before the podcast today, and then I drank 18 beers before the podcast,
I'd be very impressed.
Well, so would my liver, but would I be able to claim integrity? I did what I said I was going to do. If I said I'm going to lay in bed for 5 days straight, and then I laid in bed for 5 days straight, would I be able to claim integrity?
You're a man of your word.
Man of your word, but that's not enough, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Because all I have to do is commit to nothing the rest of my life, and I'll be able to fool myself into thinking that's some sort of integrity. When you want to know, the man with the word has a bigger plan for me. You understand? So what I'm getting at is, people, you can be smart alecky and say, hey, you're a man of your word. Yeah, you can say you have integrity, but we all know that I can't claim integrity by being lazy. We can't claim integrity by being destructive. We can't claim integrity by not advancing myself towards there's other things, not just word with behavior. The other thing, do the same thing when nobody's watching that you would when somebody's watching. Well, quite honestly, there's some things I want to do in private that I don't want to do in public. And there are some
that are good
I want to do in public, I don't want to do in private. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to cheer for my favorite baseball team when I'm at Pillow Talk with my wife. There are other things I'd like to do during Pillow Talk that I wouldn't do at a ball game. And it's important. It's incumbent on me to know which is which, when is when, right? My point is the fun. Thanks for laughing. What I'm setting my audience up to understand is that it's a good start. Nobody would argue do the same thing regardless of who's watching, or do the right thing regardless of who's watching, and be your word. Nobody would argue with those things. Now, how many of us actually do the right thing? How many of us actually are our word? Just because nobody's confronting us on it, because people don't know how to hold people accountable, doesn't mean that we have integrity. Just because nobody's calling us out on it doesn't mean. And so what I did, and I build this curiosity, I hope. I have a 10-point model. I have a 10-point model that these are the 10 things that I want us to be bringing together in order to claim the most integrity. So this is my contribution to the world of personal and professional growth. Yes. My big, audacious brand promise is that I have made it tangible to improve one's integrity. I made it accessible to understand, expand, improve one's own, or our teams, or our culture in an organization. I believe, sitting here with you, that this could be a one-player game, a multiplayer game, or an institutional game. And there's 10 points on the model, and they're not rocket science to understand. The hard part is treating the 10 points as question sets, answering the questions, and making sure the answers go together, and then behaving as much in alignment with those answers as possible. And it's a trick question, because the truth
I think this is absolutely fantastic, because I mean, so much of what you're talking about is that behavior aspect, which goes back to how we started. And even as we wrap up the way that we started, going back to motivation and accountability, I mean, there's behavior there. How are you motivating yourself? How are you motivating other people to behave? And then accountability. How are you holding yourself accountable?
That's right.
And how do you hold others accountable for the behavior that they go? And really, all of that is part of that integrity. And all of that is part of being the type of leader that is an ethical leader as well. Now, this is absolutely fascinating. Jeffrey, there's obviously so many more areas that you go, and obviously you've written about it, you talk about it. And I think that at this point in time, people are going, man, I want to know more than just motivation, more than just accountability. So where can people find you? Where can people find the book? Where can they hear more?
Yeah, the book, The Integrity Game, is available on Amazon. As a matter of fact, I'm proud to say that when we released it, it got to number one bestseller among new releases in its category, and in education and certification. So we are going to be doing certified integrity game coaches, certified integrity game speakers. There's a curriculum behind the book. So the book can be found at integritygame.com. On Amazon, and then integritygame.com if you want to play, and if you want to get 2 complimentary coaching sessions or learn about the 90-day challenge that's coming down later in the year or anything like that, you can submit and you get into our database. But otherwise, I'm just a guy. My name is Jeff, Jeff. My last name is Klubeck, Klubeck. A simple search, you'll find me, connect with me, send me a message, and I welcome you with my open digital arms.
I love it. And we'll, of course, put that all in our show notes on YouTube and our podcast show notes.
Awesome.
And people can find that. But Jeff, it's been fun, man. Fast and furious. Lots of content there for people to go back and rewatch or pause as they're going, if they're driving, but to pause and think through. And no, really, thank you so much for sharing this. These are some great things for us to grab a hold of for today.
Thank you for having me, Mike.
And to all of our listeners, thank you so much as well. Thank you for liking, subscribing, sharing, commenting. Take a moment, pass this on to somebody else. Look up Jeffrey, check out his book. It's all part of helping you advance in your leadership and your life. Until next time, this has been Mike Acker with Jeffrey Klubeck from Advance.
Thanks for listening to Advance with Mike Acker, a podcast designed to provide an edge for leaders through improving practical leadership skills and increasing confidence in speaking. Mike is a best-selling author and business owner who has helped many leaders increase their skills and their confidence, propelling them to new heights in their personal and professional endeavors. Join an incredible group of professionals taking the steps to become better leaders at connect.stepstoadvance.com. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.